Welcome to another episode of Time, Talent, Treasure Radio from Stewards Planning Group. Stewards Planning Group is a company that specializes in helping you build purposeful retirement plans, custom plans that not only help clients steward their treasure, but also their time and talent as well. They believe if you're taken care of financially, you can go even further to make the family, community, and kingdom impact you truly desire to make, which is the ultimate purpose of wealth. If you'd like to set up a no-cost, no-obligation meeting with one of their financial advisors, please give them a call at 222-4236. You can request a meeting at stewardsplanning.com, or you can simply stop by their office on 19th Avenue Southwest in Wilmer.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Time, Talent, Treasure Radio. I'm your host, Ben Taatjes, and before I even get started on the show this week, I want to make sure, if you weren't listening last week, Jonathan Shofner and I talked a little bit about how important it is to have some organization, and certainly answered the step one of a steward's plan, which is answering the question, what am I stewarding? You can't steward if you don't know where it is. And that brought up this conversation about making sure that both spouses are in the room when talking about money matters. And Jonathan joins me in the studio again, and you made a point. You actually brought up a phrase after last time's recording, which hit a nerve with me. And then after our recording, I've heard from several listeners and other people that have said that's really a bigger issue than really we give it credit to. And what were you talking about there?
Financial infidelity.
Financial infidelity. And I've heard of that before, but I don't know that we've unpacked it or double-clicked on it enough really to talk more about it. And I want to do that today. So this is kind of a continuation of last week's show, but just an important item for spouses and to make sure, significant others, that you don't get caught up in what we're going to call financial infidelity. It sounds pretty serious, right? It sounds like something that is a maybe it sounds too extreme for people, but it's actually more common than most people think. And I want to define it first of all, and then we'll get into what it is and really where it comes from. But financial infidelity is simply this. It's when one partner is not fully honest or transparent about money with the other partner. And what this can look like is maybe hidden purchases, golf clubs, Jonathan, talking to you there, secret accounts, maybe not disclosing debt, or just avoiding conversations about money altogether. That's the one that I've had the most struggle with my wife and I, just making sure that we talk about this. I talk about it every day at work, and I'm in this industry, but do we talk about money enough together? And it doesn't come from bad intent, right? It's not something that we do on purpose. I think more often than not, it comes from fear. It comes from maybe a place of embarrassment, different money habits. Maybe you were raised differently than your spouse, or just not knowing how to communicate about it. So, Jonathan, you've given me examples of this, and we've talked about it off air. But I think it's important that people realize that it usually doesn't start with some big thing. It actually starts small, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Just one little thing turns into something bigger.
Have you ever done that?
Absolutely.
So sitting here today on the air, give me an example of something even small that you did which would contribute towards this.
Just inflating or deflating prices of purchases.
I love it. I've done the same thing. It's like, yeah, I went and I bought I bought this new driver, and it was, $200 and some dollars. Well, that means, number one, that means $299. And sometimes it even means $399 because it's almost there, right? So that happens all the time. Or hey, I'm going out and it's like, I used to call it girl math. My wife would say it was, $50. I knew that was $59. Right? Mm-hmm. So it's just this little inflation or deflation of what you're talking about. So a deflationary might be, yeah, I owe a little bit, and then you start digging in a little bit deeper and you find out really what's there. So I think it might even be smaller than that. Jonathan, it might even be where a small purchase is easier just not to mention it. Just don't talk about it. And here's the concern that I would have for our couples out there is, over long periods of time, these small little money like discrepancies and financial infidelity can actually become a lot bigger than that. And what it can kind of the root of it can actually come out and start to feel and look more like to your spouse of a lack of trust, values, missing out on communication, and then being shared direction. Like we're going in the same direction, can't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's the real risk. And I think what do we do about it? How do we address it? And I think that's the importance is we want to make sure that you don't end up seeing this what might seem like a small thing, and we've seen it where couples are together in a room, right? Like we talked about last week's show, is like a surprise account from here or there, and they laugh about it a little bit, but yet it's almost like I don't trust, my spouse to know that we've got this account because he'll want to go buy that new truck that we've talked about we don't have the money for, or she'll want to go and remodel the kitchen. I know those are, kind of just, examples, and you can fill it in with however you want, but typically that's what happens. And now I'm looking at mistrust, misalignment, and decisions are made in isolation, and that's what we're trying to avoid in a financial plan or a steward's plan. So how do we address it? Jonathan, how do you start addressing this with your clients?
Well, the first thing is making sure both clients are in meetings. I think, being married and financial goals has to be a team approach. So both players, both, husband and wife have to be in the meeting, and they both have to be aligned on the same goals. So
that's the word I had in mind. It was, reviewing accounts together, talking through upcoming expenses, and aligning on goals. Right? I mean, one of the things you and I can do, and I've seen that with our other advisors as well on the team, is we can be a safe place for the clients to discuss their financial goals, right? And we'll get into that on the next steps of the steward's plan. But discussing those goals together is everything. And we can kind of create that, ask those questions. Some of my favorite questions to visit with clients, and it can kind of get at the root of this, is what was money like for you as a kid? Love that question, because we ask both husband and wife that question. And many times we find that some of what has caused some of this divide and this financial infidelity is she was raised differently than he was. He was raised this way and she was raised that way. And it kind of stems even from that, how they had money or didn't have money growing up. So a quick, just practical step I'll share with our clients and listeners today. So some of you maybe won't take the time to actually sit down with your advisor and talk about this. If you're willing and able, we'd love to sit down with you and visit with this type of thing. But even if you just set down 30 minutes together, set aside 30 minutes and ask each other, are we fully aligned when it comes to money? The answer will be no. It will be really hard to be fully aligned. And we're not perfect. Everything's not exact. But let's get some alignment on the core things. What's most important? I'm a person who, person of faith who believes giving is important. I'm so thankful my wife and I agree on that, and we are fully aligned. We disagree on some other things, big purchases, small purchases, of course. But at the end of the day, the most important stuff we're aligned on. If you get in that conversation and it's not exactly going as planned, don't be afraid to talk about it even with somebody. To have that conversation, either with an advisor, the right type of advisor. I would say somebody on our team has dealt with that type of thing, or even a counselor at that point, because we know that money issues are one of the easiest ways to cause divide in a relationship. So part of stewardship, right, is being a good steward together. And that's really what we want to make sure our listeners are hearing. So until next week, focus on being a good steward and steward well.
Ben Taatjes, Jonathan Shofner, Kendra Peterson, and Claire Bolden are financial advisors at Stewards Planning Group. Securities offered through Cetera Wealth Services, LLC. Member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Cetera Investment Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. 1104 19th Avenue Southwest, Wilmer, Minnesota 56201. The views depicted in this material are for information purposes only and are not necessarily those of Cetera Wealth Services, LLC. They should not be considered specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Neither Cetera Wealth Services, LLC nor any of its representatives may give legal or tax advice.